Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had an excellent holiday, and I hope things are going spectacularly for you so far in 2021. I'm talking to you from the past. I'm recording this intro on 12/23, which, if any second wave emo fans are out there, is the perfect day to listen to that Jimmy Eat World song 12/23/95, especially the new acoustic version I just realized exists. So definitely check that out. But I hope things are going well for you. I hope things are going well for me. Presumably they are. But, even with optimistic vaccine news that I've seen, it's still important to continue to wear a mask and be safe. I'm starting to see hints of light at the end of the tunnel, and I want to make sure as many people get there as possible. So it's important to continue to follow your CDC and local guidelines on that. But I'm excited to share today's episode with you. My guest on the show today is comedian Dave Waite. Dave is a comic. He lives in Los Angeles now. I knew him during his time in New York City. You've probably seen him on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. He's a regular at the Comedy Store, and he's a very, very funny comic who he falls into kind of that category of comedians that I know from their act very well, but I don't know much about them personally, nor have I had a really long conversation with. So this is the first time me and Dave have kind of like sat down and had a nice chat. And I'm looking forward to sharing this with you guys. Dave has several comedy albums out. You can listen to them wherever you get your music and your stand-up comedy albums. So make sure you check those out as well. And this is a really great chat about the process of being a working comic. We talk about recording albums. We talk about the business of putting together tours, Montreal, all those benchmarks that you hit, like that you hear about coming up in New York City. And I'm excited to get into it. I'll let you know there were a couple of hiccups with my internet during the podcast, so I do apologize for any dips in audio quality, but I do assure you that they are minimal. So thank you guys for being here, and thank you for comparatively a great 2020 on the podcast. 2020 on the podcast was great, despite the world being set afire around it. And I am cautiously optimistic about where 2021 will bring us. So thank you guys for being here, and let's go to my chat with comedian Dave Waite. I relate to your struggle immediately because in the current state of the pandemic, I don't know what things are like where you are right now, but I feel like effectively, even though there were summer shows going on and there's rooftop stuff going on in New York, and I effectively feel like right now the art of stand-up comedy, for all intents and purposes, doesn't really exist right now, even though it's still happening.
Yeah, I mean, over the summer, I live in Los Angeles, so everything's pretty shut down now in terms of comedy shows. But over the summer, I went home to Cincinnati and was doing shows outside for like 2 months. The comedy club there, Go Bananas, set up a stage in their parking lot. I mean, I felt comfortable doing shows outside, because everybody was spaced out. But
Right.
when I see, and I did a couple shows in clubs inside, and the one club, everybody had their mask on the whole time, even at their tables. And I felt okay with that, and, but then I did another club and people weren't, as soon as they sit down, everybody took their mask off, and you're on stage and you look at everybody's bare face and they're all projecting at you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. All those droplets are heading your way.
And I was just like, this isn't right. And a lot of the material I've written since all this started is kind of making fun of people that aren't taking the virus seriously and kind of, but if people are inside at a comedy show, none of that's going to work because they're not taking it serious. And, it's it's hard to believe like such a divide has been created.
I know, and a lot like for me, a lot of it comes back to this kind of idea, especially when I look at how other countries have handled COVID and restrictions and safety procedures. Like the country of Japan, I feel like they're just like a naturally more like respectful people as a whole, whereas they because masks were common when you were sick before COVID, and now everyone wore masks, and Korea and Taiwan have done excellently as far as containing stuff. I just feel like I keep hearing that phrase American exceptionalism a lot. Like it's like you can't tell me I can't do something detrimental to my health and safety because I have the right to, and it just really bugs me. It just really bugs me.
But yeah, I mean, if they were believing in American exceptionalism, they would have to realize that we're not number one. We're not doing the best. We're not setting. The idea of America. That idea is that we're doing the best, and everybody wants to follow our lead, and people want to come to our country because they want to make it. It's like, bro, we dropped the ball, dog. We're not number one.
Exactly. It's like I imagine it's like Dallas Cowboy fans who still feel like their team's the best, and it's like it's not the '90s anymore. Things have gone sideways.
I mean, I think I get a little bit more of a Raiders Nation vibe from America, where we're angry for no reason. We're scary.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. Like there's just that ingrained like kind of like the inferiority is visible to everyone else, but except for the participants in the group that's inferior. I relate to that. But one thing I did I have done I will say this, having a podcast has helped as far as continuing to like stay connected to humans, because otherwise I feel like my natural inclination is to just go in my room and not talk to people. But I was listening to your albums earlier today to prepare for this, and not only incredibly funny, but I felt like your newest album was a lot looser compared to some of your early stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely. The longer I'm doing comedy, the looser I get. I mean, sometimes to the point where it kind of all comes apart. But I feel like you always got to be pushing forward, and for me, I always want it to be fresh and present. And
Sure.
sometimes you see like the Seinfeld type comics where it's like precision based. It's all
Yeah.
if you see Seinfeld, it's always gonna be like an A. It's always gonna be good, B plus maybe, but it's never gonna be like it'll never blow your fucking mind. You know what I mean? Because it's just
Hmm.
always it's like on that strict regiment. Where sometimes I'm like the show's a mess, but sometimes I feel like I could be the funniest motherfucker ever.
Sure. Well, that's what I always like about comedy is I always compare that element of stand up to like live theater, where something could go completely haywire, and only the people in that room will have that experience. That's the exciting part of it. But I do agree with you, especially when it comes to Seinfeld. I always compare Seinfeld and his like joke writing process to like classical music, or like a band like Dream Theater, like very technically precise, very well thought out. And I like his jokes. I think he's a brilliant writer, but I do agree with you. By the time that his new Netflix special came out, I'd been seeing him like hone a lot of those jokes on late night, or I'd seen him like on YouTube for a while. So it wasn't surprised, but I was like, okay, it was like finally seeing like the final draft of that process.
Yeah, I mean it's I don't think it's as precious as like he makes it out to be. And
Hmm.
some com- I mean, comedy is timing. So you got to hit those marks, and it is a safer route to go to make sure you do your act every way at the same time and all that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
The probability that you're always going to have a good set is much higher, but at some point, I don't know, like when I've had to prepare for sets for like an audition or a TV spot, you run the set so many times that all of a sudden the words just don't even mean anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like you're saying noises to get this laugh noise, whatever meaning that was behind it has been stripped away.
Right, because you've repeated it so many times, and
Yeah,
it's and again, live comedy is that sort of kind of there's like that give and take to it. It's not like a theater piece, but I guess like when you're like preparing an album, I'm guessing by the time you record an album, you've been doing that set for at least a little while. Um, do you kind of approach it like you're like putting together like a performance piece, or do you just kind of go up there and still give yourself that freedom that you do if it's like Friday night late show?
well, every album I've recorded has been like a whole run of shows, like 4 or 5 shows, and then putting the best of them together.
Mm-hmm.
So, it takes a little bit of the pressure off to try to nail it. If you blow a bit or you cough or there's just you forget a word or something, at least you have a couple different things to choose from over the weekend. But that also, knowing that, if I'm going to use multiple shows, there's some shows where I can improvise and riff and stuff like that, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
take those pieces and put them together with the regular bits.
Right. You can kind of cut everything together as and make it like a kind of like a best of the weekend kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Now that
I mean, I mean, for me, if I were to just try to record it in 1 or 2 shows, and then one bit didn't work, and then I'd probably just get angry, and then that would derail. It would put too much pressure on that one set, It would like derail it.
totally. Yeah, I know
And
exactly what you mean.
it's not like when you're like, I recorded a TV thing over the summer for Epics, and the audience was like super pumped. They were amped,
Yeah.
and it was like a thing because it was like during the COVID time, everybody got tested. It was like this thing that people could go do, so they were already extra amped. That it was like a safe entertainment thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little bit, but when you're recording an album, it's not like the audience is like they give a fuck. You know what I mean?
Right. They're just kind of there for the
The host
show.
can go up there and be like, "Hey, Dave's recording an album," and the audience is like, "We don't give a shit," or that puts pressure on the audience.
Right. It's like, oh well, I hope he's funny. And like, ah ha ha ha. Ah, that's a
Yeah,
really good bit. Excellent. Yeah.
yes. So I mean, I just do like the multiple shows, but I do have like a set, and then I'm like aware, like I look at the set, I'll be like, oh, I forgot to get that joke in tonight. Let me try to get it on the next show or something, so I have it at least a choice when I'm listening back to the tapes to put that on the album.
Sure. That seems to be that seems to kind of be the general approach back. I guess now I don't know if Comedy Central is looking to do stand up in their programming going forward, but it did seem like live stand up recording is starting to move more towards that to kind of keep that like the again kind of keep that like feel of anything could happen compared to like a very cut and polished performance.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like like Mitch Hedberg's Comedy Central presents. I always think about that, like the unedited version of that performance compared to the edited version. They're like two completely different shows.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a real testament to that guy. I mean, he was up against it, and really kind of brought it back there. But you know, it's comedy. It's a fucking hard business. When
Oh,
you watch that unedited one, and you're like watching, one of the best comedians of that generation, and the audience, they don't know what the fuck's happening. You know what I mean?
yeah. So a real sometimes it's a disparity between what we know, what we think is really good, and what we know is really good comedy and performance compared to what's popular or what the like average person who attends a stand-up show would laugh at. is not always quite the same.
Well, yeah, there's like this book I read a couple. I don't know when the fuck every all time is jumbled, but there's this guy came up with this theory about artists. It's called the advanced genius theory, where that
Mm.
you're like advanced ahead of the audience. Where like somebody like Bob Dylan,
Hmm.
when he went electric, the audience was like, "Fuck this," But then a couple years later, it was like a triumph. And then later, Dylan put out like these. He got a religion. He put out some like religious themed albums, and everybody's like, "This is fucking bullshit." And he got booed again, and then years later, people went back and were like, "Oh, this is tight. This is good music." Where I think Mitch Hedberg now has probably a bigger audience than when he was alive. But he was getting there. Like I saw him probably like maybe 6 months or a year before he died.
Uh-huh.
It was sold out like 6 shows at a comedy club, and
Oh,
that
wow.
you know, and he was. I went to the last show, and he bought everybody in the audience a shot, which is fucking crazy.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but so he was getting there where he was starting to get his audience.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but he was definitely ahead of where people were at, or his style wasn't easily digestible to. I think for that show they bust in a bunch of people like, hey, you want to be in a TV comedy audience, and they don't have no point of reference.
Hmm.
If you get an audience that isn't necessarily comedy fans and you throw something that's like advanced at them like that, yeah, they're not gonna fucking rise to the occasion. I mean, they did eventually because he was such a good artist, but it took way too long. It should have been a triumph the whole time.
No, I know what you mean. I agree completely because he did. I feel like people, the crowd did love him by the end of that set, and he never that's a situation where I think maybe a lesser comedian would have like bailed on the taping. But he just kind of was like, "This is what I do, and I'm gonna keep doing it. And you guys are just you're gonna have to like me because we're 8 minutes in." That's cool.
Yeah, I
You
mean, I think it wasn't the first time that had happened to him.
Oh no, totally. That's cool. You got to see him live. Where did you see him?
I saw him at the Newport Funny Bone in Newport, Kentucky, right across from Cincinnati. It's right across the river. That was like the first place I ever went on stage was that club, and yeah, and I saw Mitch there, and then Chappelle did like some shows there right when he came back from like Africa. That was like one of the first places he did shows and shit.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I remember reading about those gigs where he the one quote I remember from that show is he talks about movie pitches he would get, and he was like imitating talking to his agents like, "Oh, it's me and Ludacris, and they think we did it." That's the one line I remember from those being really funny. So are you from Ohio or Kentucky?
well, I am from Kentucky, but I grew up right across from Cincinnati. They're right on the border. Uh, you know, I grew up like a couple miles from downtown Cincinnati.
Gotcha. And so not quite not quite the Ozarks, but like a little north of that.
Well, the Ozarks are pretty far away. That's in Missouri. We're close to like Appalachia. I don't know if you ever seen the show Justified.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up, more with I grew up in a small town, but right next to a big city, so I had more of that sort of vibe growing up.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I grew up about an hour south of DC, which gets very very rural and spread out once you get away from DC itself.
Yeah, I mean, I was farther away from the rural area than I was the city bus went through my hometown. We'd go and take the bus and go see the Cincinnati Reds, and we could walk home and shit like that. It would take about an hour.
Gotcha. Yeah, if I wanted to go to Walmart, that was like a 30-minute drive. That's where that's where
Yeah,
I'm from.
it's a different. Yeah, it's such a weird. Like when you say Kentucky, people have such a different. They already have their own image in their mind or something like that. You know.
Yeah, Kentucky
Uh,
is definitely one of those states that has like an automatic like reputation.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would have to say it's probably because of Mitch McConnell right now. But my wife when she was in college like filmed a documentary there, and there was this restaurant that had this like amazing pie recipe. So
Oh, yeah.
that's what I think of when I think of Kentucky.
I mean, there is a lot of good food, and a lot of music has come out of there, and
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting place. I mean, Hunter S. Thompson's from there, so and we're just going through a weird streak with we got the two worst senators, Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul. I mean, it's like, God damn. And Kentucky shouldn't have this much. I'm from there. We shouldn't have that much influence over the country. If our main export was like bourbon and horses or something like that, then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
those two guys should be the most popular fucking guys. But that's
Yeah.
not that's not where our economy is these days. Or coal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm hoping like this is like a weird rebuilding set of years, and then something will start revitalizing that area, because I think of that whole like section of the Midwest as the kind of area that like politicians always talk about, and there's like a lot of struggles happening for people in that section of the Midwest, and that are not getting addressed.
Well, I
Um,
mean, so I moved away from that area like 10 years ago, and then since Cincinnati, like itself, like the downtown area is like happening. There's all sorts of restaurants. It's like a place you could. When I was growing up, you never went down there. It was fucking pretty scary and shit.
mhm.
Uh, there was a couple times where it led like the murder rate. I think that goes back and forth between a couple of cities, but they had a couple. Cincinnati had a couple year stretch where it was like that, but now it's like it's pretty nice down there. It's tight. When I go home, that's the place to go.
Yeah, I'm a big soccer fan, and FC Cincinnati. We were hearing before they joined the MLS. We were hearing like I saw this stuff about how excited like people were for that team, and like they were like packing out where the place where they played. They were getting like record numbers before they were
Yeah,
even
I
in the main
saw
leagues.
they would like march to the games and like because they were playing where the University of Cincinnati is, so it kind of had that European vibe where there was like because the stadium was on campus, so there's like a bunch of bars
Uh huh.
pretty close by, so like people could go drink and then they could all march to the game, kind of like in London or something, or like one of those English towns or some shit like that. It wasn't like the stadium was out in the suburbs or something. So I
Yeah,
think that made a big difference. And the new stadium they're building is downtown Cincinnati, so it'll probably maintain that same energy.
that'll be great when that opens. And you started comedy there, and you went up at
Go bananas. That's usually where would go. Yeah.
yeah, which from what everything I've heard every comic say when they talk about Go Bananas, they always mention it in the same breath as like Comedy Works or Acme or like Laughing Skull, like one of the best clubs in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've always been real supportive of the local scene, and
Mm-hmm.
they take risk on people on their way up. You know what I mean? I think they were like one of the first clubs that headlined Mike Birbiglia and shit like that. And
Mm-hmm.
the my because I started like hosting there, and then I would host a couple times a year. And I remember got to host for Bill Burr and
Oh,
all
nice.
sorts of great comics. Uh, so I got that access to like watch these people and be like, damn, this is tight.
Uh huh. You got to see it done right, like real comedy club headlining, like right from the gate, and got to see it done by like the masters.
Yeah, yeah. And Go Bananas wasn't really booking like the novelty acts like
Oh,
some of the chains do. You know what I mean?
yeah,
The
like
under
the guitar comics that like I know the kind of guys you're talking about. There's a guitar comic that I think like does really well in like the comedy zones, or like the the ventriloquist types, like people that make a very good living, but they're not like the in their they're not in like the comedy zeitgeist of the time.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are like I don't know how to. It's like if you were you're like a musician, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like if you were like in, I don't know how like they're doing we're both doing comedy, but they're doing like some version of like where uh
Like
I don't know.
standards, like a jazz band playing like the standards that every jazz band knows how to play versus like someone who's like like working on something different but is not known to most people, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
I know
mean,
what you mean.
a
I've
lot
worked
of
with that headliner
there's
before.
a lot of comedy audiences just want to hear something they've heard before.
Yeah, that's kind of like the the mind that's kind of like the mind splitting thing as well. I remember Comedy Central, they did this like animated short about, I think when Kinane first started like featuring on the road, like when he was able to quit his day job, and he was like working with some of like the hackiest like ventriloquist headliners and crushing with like the lowest common denominator material. So I relate to what you're saying. It's a it's a longer road to plow to come up like doing like personal stuff or like trying to do comedy that is like very like unique to you compared to like doing stuff that is gonna crush, but maybe is kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. It's disheartening when I I know I'm funny, and my peers know I'm funny. I go and do a show, don't do well, and then somebody with some of the worst bullshit gets up there and fucking crushes. You're like, boy, what is this?
I know exactly what you mean. I not so much now, but I had that feeling a lot. Like when I first moved to New York, and I was just like trying to figure out how do you get club attention so I can get that unpaid check spot. And I was like, and I would sit there and sometimes go, really, I'm as good as some of these people. Why am I still having to do the 4 o'clock bringer audition?
Yeah, yeah. But I don't really encounter that type of act just because I've switched to like where I go and perform now and stuff like that. It's rare that happens, and I've gotten a lot better now where I can, even if they don't buy in what I'm selling, I can still kind of grind through a set where it's not a fucking total bomb.
Sure, sure. And how long were you in Ohio when you started comedy?
Well, I was there 2004 through 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So like the first 6 years, but I started like going on the road after like 2 years and all over the Midwest and stuff like that.
Oh, so you were able to start doing shows in the Midwest kind of early.
Yeah, because all the places are pretty close. They need different hosts. Somebody cancels last minute, so you get a chance to feature. There's
Mm-hmm.
just all sorts of opportunities because there's a lot of clubs within a couple hour drive of where you're from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So if you're in Ohio, so you're probably like doing Kentucky, Indiana, places like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Like the Dayton, Ohio had clubs. Then there was clubs in Indianapolis, Louisville, Lexington. Then Michigan was only 4 hours away to like Ann Arbor
Uh
and
huh.
Detroit. And then if you went over to like Grand Rapids, at 7 hours. Then Huntington, West Virginia had a club for a little bit that was 3 hours away.
Oh yeah.
There's just all these different places that were like 5, 6, 7, 8. Milwaukee's 7 hours away. Madison was like 7 hours away. So there's all these places, within this you could drive within a day and get there, sort of deals.
Gotcha.
So made a big difference.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you're playing to lot like geographically different groups of people. I can only imagine that's helpful as a performer. Was that the Funny Bone in West Virginia?
Oh yeah, did you know those people?
I know the Funny Bone from uh, there's this guy called the Disgruntled Clown. I saw some video. A lot of his videos were from his EPK. Were from the Funny Bone.
Oh
And
yeah, the clown. That's what he called himself. My buddy, my buddy worked with him there.
uh-huh.
Yeah, he was a huge hit. That I mean, that club was like they loved like the disgruntled clown. One time I worked with like Brad Williams there, and
Uh-huh.
boy, the people came out of the hills to come see him. You know, that was like the circus came to town or something like that to go see a little person. You know, when I was on stage, I could feel it. They're like, "This guy's too tall for us. Get him out of the fucking way."
Right. It's like this is too much like the people I hang out with every single day. That's so interesting. It's interesting to me, like what's cool on like in like California, like through Washington and like the Northeast, compared to what's cool in from like again like Ohio and like Nebraska, Oklahoma, go down to Florida. It's so interesting to me because like there are comics that like make that like make very comfortable livings just doing like that circuit that you're like the cool kids in Brooklyn will never consider comedy, but they're doing what they're doing what they want to do, which is making a living. That the schism, the difference between what's happening in the middle versus the edges of the country, comedically, is very fascinating to me.
I mean, yeah, I mean, as somebody that's been out there on the road and done it, and has some success, there's sometimes I see like alternative comedy that I'm like, man, I don't know who this is for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. you know, there's like stuff that is obviously too hacky, and then there's stuff that's so like I don't know who this is for. Where even when they're not doing well in front of an alternative audience or something like that. Even though I don't know how big of a difference there is. I mean, I don't really get caught up too much between like uh, I think like in the big cities like in LA where they act like there's a big difference between like the east side and the clubs, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't see that there's a huge difference, but
Yeah, I don't really think so either. I always try to like uh, do stuff that I enjoy first, but try to do things that I know people are going to enjoy and not get descend too far into myself. Because if I was just trying to make me laugh, it would just be pop punk and cartoon references all day every day.
right.
And then you moved from Ohio to New York, or did you go
Yeah,
somewhere else first?
I was in New York, yeah, there for a couple years, 2 years.
Yeah, I felt like I remember. Not that we ever like spent a ton of time together, but I remember seeing. I would see you at the Creek on Friday nights pretty frequently. I would recall.
I was over there a lot because I lived in Astoria. That was like the closest place to get to for
Yeah, that's where I live now. I live in Astoria now, and well, the creek's gone. I don't know
Yeah,
what's
I
going to
saw that.
happen. I don't know what's going to happen with QED or any of the other places. I'm planning, and when I was talking to James Mattern, he's pretty optimistic. I'm imagining we're going to be doing like big tent revival parking lot kind of shows for at least for a little while, um, during the
Yeah,
vaccine years.
yeah, Mad Dog. Yeah, he used to live upstairs from me.
Oh,
That
really?
guy. Hey, Bubba, hey, I want to go get some froyo. He loved froyo.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I lived there, they put a froyo place in. He was fucking so amped. It was so funny to think some guy named Mad Dog was fucking pumped about froyo.
He's like one of my. I think he's like one of the funniest dudes in New York. I always, whenever I'm on a show with him, I'm always excited. Like I get very excited about comedy when I get to hang out with like guys like you or him or Sean Donnelly. I feel like it's pretty easy for comics if you're not getting booked enough to get into that spiral of criticizing who has a Netflix special on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, also they get success and they still can't enjoy it. I think being grateful is one of the key things. You just really gotta, take time and be grateful for the things that you have. And when I look back, I mean, I've been doing it for 16 years now. I mean, there's not that many people left from, how many people make it this long. So, I mean, and I've gotten to go to a lot of cool places. I've got to do a lot of cool things. Do I wish I had more money? Do I wish I didn't have roommates? Sure. But I mean, I'm still doing it.
Yeah, and I think at a certain point, that's part of the victory as well, is to continue to still be doing it. What's the farthest, what's the most like wild place you've ever done a stand up gig? Have you ever like gone out of the country?
Huh?
Have you ever gone out of the country
I'm
to
sorry.
do stand up?
I've never gone out of the country to do stand up. I mean, I went to Alaska. That was fucking pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
Uh, yeah. And yeah, but I haven't went out of the country. I do miss New York. I ran the restaurant show. Did you ever do that? I'm sure you probably did, right?
I probably did. Where
It was
was
a
it?
place called Restaurant. It was a place called Restaurant. I think it was called RAR. RAR.
Yes, I did.
And
Yes,
man,
I've done that show. Yeah.
it it was never good, but it was close to where I live.
Mhm.
I could drink for free, and man, that was a good time. I like that. Uh,
Yeah, I've done that show. I think
uh,
I did it when it was
yeah.
under Sam Evans and Patrick Hasty. But yeah, that's a fun spot.
But yeah, a lot of Cincinnati people. Yeah, when I left New York, I gave it to Mark Shalafu, and then maybe Andrew Short was involved for a little bit, and then oh shit, is the internet? Oh,
Oh,
hello.
oh no, I'm still
Oh,
here. I'm gonna kill my
did
video.
I
Maybe.
freeze?
Oh no, I can. You're still there. I'm gonna kill my
You kill
video.
your
Maybe
video?
save a little bandwidth. There we go. Can look at my headshot.
You think that's me is it me or you? I can never tell. Like every once in a while on these Zooms, it'll be like it'll freeze up like that. And I'm like, I don't know if I got to get a better internet or some shit.
I think it might. I think it might be me. The Wi-Fi in my building can be wonky depending on the time of day. But you're sounding good. You're sounding good now. Alaska, that must have been a trip. But yes, I definitely did a RAR bar. That was a fun time. And then you did a late night in with Jimmy Fallon in New York also. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like kind of what's that? Made me be like, well, I'm gonna leave, even though it's not like it wasn't like I just like New York was so much for me. I was like, it was a little bit overwhelming, and then I always wanted to move to LA. Anyways, I wasn't really planning on ever living in New York, but these
Hmm.
guys, Reed Failer and Andrew Short, were moving to New York, and I didn't want to move to a big city by myself. So that's why I moved there. And then I got the Fallon thing, and then Montreal shortly after that. And I was like, fuck, I'm out. I'm going to leave, dog. It didn't say, it was like a chance to escape without anybody being like, he didn't make it. New York beat him up.
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't seen Reed or Andrew in a long time. So you got to New York,
Yeah,
and
I think they both quit comedy, man.
yeah, I haven't heard from either of those dudes in a while. It's weird how this business kind of works sometimes, because I feel like I'm with the same group of people for a really long time, and then they all kind of vanish, and then I just am trying to figure out what happened to them, like what path
Yeah.
did their lives take. So you're only in New York for a couple of years, and then Montreal and Found happened. That's cool, man.
It was good. And then I got out here, and then it, it it hasn't been as fast, but some good stuff happens here and there, and then keep trucking.
Hmm. I'm curious about the process for Montreal. I've been to that city a couple times, and I think it's a really cool city. But I was hoping you could kind of take me through the process of getting the audition, and then what you like. Do you do basically the same set from your audition to new faces?
Well, like I had auditioned maybe like 2 or 3 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I auditioned for Fallon, the next night I also auditioned for Montreal. So I did those like back to back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I did like, at the time it was the same guy. It was Jeff Singer. He was booking both of them. So
Uh-huh.
like for the Montreal edition, I was like, I'll do some different shit because why not? You know?
Sure, sure.
Which I was like, he just saw me last night. I better do something fucking different. So, and then, I think, it was in months. I think I auditioned in May and then it was in July. So I did a different set. I mean, the first night I bombed, everybody did the first night when I went rushed. And after he crushed, the audience didn't give a shit. They were done. And he went up fifth. And there was like a bunch of people after him. But he crushed so hard, like the industry was like sucking him off in the back, and the audience didn't give a fuck. And I wasn't directly after him, but like the guy I was rooming with at Montreal, we were sharing a room. He was like maybe like one or two after him, and he was up there bombing, and I was like, oh fuck, what am I gonna say to him when I get back to the hotel room? How am I gonna lie to this fucking guy? And then I went up and didn't do any better. It was a fucking nightmare. And then the next night I had a great set, but it was this next night. It's less prestige that night. But it was fucking crazy.
Oh, that's wild. And who were you up before?
I don't know who. I don't know who. I don't know who else was there. Or, is that what you're saying? Or?
Yeah.
That year, like Anthony DeVito was there, and Joe List, and Annie Letterman, and guy Ryan Dalton, and Joe Mackey, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then fucking Cumtown guy, what's his name? Nick Mullen, he was there.
Oh yeah.
And I can't remember the other people, but
yeah, solid
Joe
group.
Mackey, he fucking crushed it.
Yeah, Joe, I like Joe a lot. Joe makes me laugh. So when you do Montreal, is the idea, at least at this time, is the idea that you're gonna go there and you're looking for like, I guess, show offers or like representation when you get to Montreal? Like what's like everyone's goal generally?
I don't know. I guess your goal is to get like heat or whatever. You know what I mean? Where you get like
Sure.
people coming, getting reps, you're getting meetings, things are fucking. You want to leave there like, oh, this guy crushed it. He was the shit.
Gotcha.
I mean, I had a really good set the second night, and I ended up getting a man. Oh shit! We still there?
Oh no, I can hear you. Yeah, no, I can still hear you. Yeah, you're good.
I just see that thing. It says, when I see that thing, it says unstable, and I'm like in the middle of like some long monologue. I'm like, am I just talking to fucking no one? Because I've done like a bunch of these Zoom podcasts lately, and then I'll be like on this tangent, and I'm like, man, I'm saying some cool shit, and then they'll go, hey, so you cut off like 3 minutes ago, and I'll be like, oh fuck, all right, okay.
If you wanted to kill the video, that's fine. But you were saying your the goal is to like go in there and generate heat and just be like, oh, this guy crushed it. Oh, I want to talk to, and you want industry like talking to that guy.
Yeah, you want to leave. You want to leave with this heat. That's yeah. And that first night, man, Joe Mackey had all the heat, and the rest of us felt like the bums.
Uh-huh.
It was crazy. Like Howie Mandel's like sitting there fucking telling Joe Mackey how fucking funny he is, and then nobody is talking to the rest of us. I mean, it was like a fucking nightmare. I was describing it as the best worst time of my life because we were like having a great time during the day and the after parties and fucking kicking it, but that part fucking sucked.
I bet. Oh my god, because I imagine it's almost like it's not quite like being at a prom, but it's similar because you want to be like noticed by like these people that you've been seeing on TV for years and years. That's wild.
Yeah, and you're like, in your mind, it's gotten built up. Like, I mean, it wasn't like that one point where they were like giving out development deals. That had already like stopped. Back in the day, people were walking out there with development deals and holding contracts and like money and shit like that. Like that was already long gone by the time we did it. But you're still thinking you might come out and this is going to be like, this is the next step. This is the thing that's going to push you in the fucking. We're in the mix now.
Right.
And then you're all of a sudden you're like, man, yikes. I mean, I think it's like, for a lot of people, it's like it fucks with their head. They get that, and then nothing comes of it, and then they're just like, oh, okay. Because I think I did the second year of the unrepped, So you're up there, the rep people, they got their rep up there, maybe trying to fucking blow their horn for them and fucking try to generate heat for them, or at least they got a guide for them or something at the after parties, and there's all these suits and sharks swimming around, But when you're like unrepped, you're just like some fucking yokel up there fucking walking around, not knowing what the fuck's happening.
Yeah, totally. And you're just kind of like, oh, well.
It's like it's like going to the NBA. You're like an undrafted NBA player or like an undrafted football player, and you're just like showing up and like trying to run some laps for people and show off your skills. And then you're not kind of preening there and shit, but you still feel like a dumbass.
Right. And then, and so Montreal doesn't quite live up to your expectations. And then what happens after you get back? Do you immediately go from Montreal to moving to LA?
Maybe like did that, and I came back, was back for a couple of months, and then I moved back to Cincinnati, back to Kentucky, whatever. I stayed with my parents for a couple of months, and then I moved to Los Angeles at the beginning of 2013, which I think was it was nice to go home for a couple months because LA is such a different speed than New York that going back to like the Midwest, which seems like time moves like glacially compared to New York. And then when I went to LA, I was like, ooh, it's sped up again, but not compared to New York.
Yeah, like New York has that like, and not just in comedy, but it has that like relentless, constant, like frenetic pace. Like if you are taking any time to relax, then you're doing something wrong because you're not working hard enough. Compared to like this idea I hear of like the California lifestyle. It's like, oh yeah, maybe I'll do like one set a night, or maybe I'll get two sets in depending on the day. But then you have all this like wonderful sunshine and nice weather.
Yeah, I mean, there's the nice weather. I mean, I was out taking a walk today. It's a high 60s, and it feels pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And when you get to, and how have things been for you since you've been in LA? Because from my perspective, to me the thing that I find most exciting is the number of comedy albums. Because to me, like having a document of yourself as a comedian to me is very important. Maybe more so than it actually is. But I admire your output, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always just trying to put stuff out there, and it's like everything. I'm like, maybe this will be the thing that get some more fans, and everything's a ruse to get more fans. But you just if I got material, I'm going to put it out there. I mean, I don't, I'm not a perfectionist. So, sometimes the material is like, okay. And then other times it's all better. I don't know. I mean, if I, if I was even more prolific, I'd probably be putting out like a record every year, but I don't think I could do that. I could probably put out like a 20-minute EP or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or like an album like every 2 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
I felt like when Louis was like on the top of his game, the whole I and then when people started learning about Edinburgh, the everyone was like, you got to do a set a year and then chuck everything. I feel like now people are like, well, maybe you can give yourself a little bit more time, or if you have like a certain theme, you could build that as a separate show, separate from what would be like your act.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I think, putting out a record every year is a little bit bonkers. I feel like there's just a diminished return on some of that stuff. We're just not completely honed. Like, they just spend a little bit more time on this, but it's also different. So once you get your own audience, the audience is giving you more leeway, so you can get away with more bullshit. So who knows?
Yeah, yeah, you can go on on those riffs when people like you. Compared to like, I felt like some of my club sets in New York in the before times, like it's almost like a fight with the audience where you're just throwing jokes so that they don't get a chance to like heckle or yell you suck.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. It's just crazy. It's so many people go to a comedy club and they don't give the performer the benefit of the doubt. They're like, make me laugh, like all like like, well, you got to do part of the work. It's
Yeah, you at least have to come with the intention of having a good time, because if you come there with the intention of ruining it for yourself, that will become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
yeah, but you see it all the time.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
and and obviously like touring isn't really much of this year is kind of like been kneecapped. But do you generally spend a lot of time on the road? And are you doing like putting that together yourself like a punk rock band would? Or you
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a lot on the road for at least a decade, and then the past couple of years I've kind of like dialed it back, and then I start last year I started working at the Comedy Store, so I was working there, and then going on the road here and there a little bit more selectively. But I have done like those. I did like a big tour a couple years ago where like 8 weeks or something, where it was all like indie venues mixed in with some clubs and stuff like that,
mm-hmm.
which I like that. I like going to almost like a rock band where you do a show and then you bounce and go to a different place. And I find the audiences that will come to like a different sort of venue or a little bit more open than a comedy club audience. If you're showing up at like this funky bar on a Tuesday night, you're going to be a better crowd. They're going to give you more runway than a comedy club audience is.
Yeah, I could see that, because that's a different kind of comedy fan. The Tuesday night in a odd venue, compared to the your typical like pay a cover, like comedy clubs. Like once you add that cover and that 2 drink minimum, there's like a lot of expectation. I think like you want to. I always feel like I want to be at least that amount of dollars funny.
Yeah, or they're going there for their own alternative purpose. Like it's somebody's birthday or they're celebrating an anniversary, and you're just kind of the clown there to for their own personal enjoyment.
Mm-hmm. Is
Whereas somebody that's like in a funky venue, that they're going there because they love comedy. They're like they're just a different mix of people. Than a comedy club audience is also people that are going to the mall for their entertainment, whereas if you're like performing in a downtown area or some hip part of town, you're just going to get a different a group, a demographic.
Exactly. And I imagine that is by city also. Do you have like favorite, is there like a part of the crowd, the part of the country that just loves Dave Waite?
Well, I always did really well in Minnesota. Well, yeah, and Wisconsin. I recorded my one record there.
Mhm.
The Kaboom record. No, yeah, I did record that one in there, but that one's okay. But the Hot Doggin' record I recorded in Madison, and the Midwest I do pretty well. Parts of the South I do pretty good. Uh, yeah, I've never really performed in the Northeast, but besides New York, but
Mhm. Yeah, but like Boston, like New England, Connecticut, like New Hampshire area.
right, right. I did the Boston Comedy Festival once, and that was it.
Excellent, excellent. It's a major festival. I like Boston as a city. I find their comedy scene kind of hard to penetrate, at least at my level. But that's cool that you have the like the like South and the Midwest area. Is there something you want to create that you haven't created yet?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, if I had money, I would make a movie. I don't know. I guess everybody probably has that thought, though, right?
Oh yeah, like a feature film or like a documentary.
A feature film would be cool. I mean, or a documentary, either or. But yeah, I mean, a documentary seems a little bit more doable in terms of like, you could probably make it for a lot less than a feature film. But
Yeah, especially like the documentaries today where you just basically need a lav mic and then someone to follow you with a camera.
yeah, yeah. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it would be fucking real cool to make a movie.
Yeah. Is so do you have like the do you have an idea of what that script would be?
Nah, I mean, there's always just different scripts in my, I get like half an idea and stuff like that. I don't know. I probably get ADH, whatever, ADD or some shit.
Mhm. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like I had to start thinking about like as far as like my creative output, like what can I do to what can I do regularly? What can I do like weekly and daily? And to me, podcasting was pretty easy to do weekly because all I need is like at minimum one other person.
Right.
Um, and I could do stand up every night and like slowly like build up towards doing like a show or a show somewhere or something like that. But I relate to what you were saying earlier, in that we're all just kind of trying to bring it back uh, to like what's going to boost like I guess ticket sales. I don't think you said exactly like that, but that is something I think about a lot. What can I do to interest people so that maybe they'll think, oh, he seems like he would be funny. I'll buy a ticket.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would just, I would, I would just love that because it would give me more freedom as an artist. I think so many people look at it as like, oh, yeah, I'd finally get money or whatever the fuck. And I'm like, for me, it would be like, I'd be nice to have the money. Even if you could just sell like 100 tickets a night, you'd be making a lot more money. Like I went on tour. My friend Shane Moss, who's a super funny guy,
Mm-hmm.
who
Love
has
Shane.
made a documentary, uh, which I would recommend to people. It's called Psychonaut. Oh shit! It's about tripping balls and all sorts of different hallucinogens, and I'm in it for a little bit.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, he has like he does like independent venues, and he has like a following from his science podcast. And he'll sell 100 to 200, maybe 300 tickets a night in different cities all over the country. And I did like a 15-day tour with him. He did this show called Stand Up Science, where he does like 15 minutes of stand up. Then a scientist comes out and does kind of like a TED talk about some sort of sciencey bullshit. And then another comedian, which was me on this tour, was I do like 15, and then another scientist, and then all four of us would get on stage at the end. There'd be like a Q&A, and then we would riff on, like, the scientist would answer a question, and then we'd kind of riff on it, and that was a lot of fun. And to have like that sort of audience is fucking, to be able to do a show like that was like, man, this is fucking cool. But also to see, like, he's doing all right financially. You're doing that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's what I like about the way the industry is kind of starting to shift, is that it allows these cool, interesting, non what I would consider non traditionally mainstream ideas to thrive, and for people to profit from that. I've got a pitch for your documentary, Dave. So you've only performed in like the U.S. and Canada. I think we get you we if we once the travel can happen again, we get you over in Europe and through Asia doing shows. I think that could be a really interesting take on the stand up documentary.
Yeah, I mean, you find me the funding, and I'll do it.
I'll work on that. If I get enough connections and listeners in the industry, I could just start funding all of the fun ideas I come up with people. Well, dude, Dave, this has been a really enjoyable conversation. I really appreciate you like talking to me. Is there anything we can plug before we get out here?
Oh well, if people have epics, that I'm on there right now. It's called Unprotected Sets. I'm on an episode of that. It's like a half hour stand up intercut with interview. I thought it turned out really well. If you don't have epics right now, you can sign up, I think, for a week for free. Maybe it's $1 trial on Amazon Prime. So, and right now, if you haven't tried epics, there's content on there that you might not have streamed yet. I'm, I don't work for the network. I just want people to see my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then if people have sci-fi, I was on an episode of this show called The Movie Show. It just came out. I was on episode 4. I'll make an appearance on that. It's a real funny show. I recommend it to anybody. Like Roy Scovel's in it a lot, and other comedians, So The Movie Show on Sci-Fi. Those are the two things. So epics and then sci-fi.
Very cool, man. And you've got 4 stand up albums out.
Yeah, I mean the first one is kind of the first two are kind of very similar material. You could listen to both and see how one crowd liked me and another crowd didn't. I think on that first record, there's like a point where I'm just like, fuck, like I'm just exasperated. That guy, I recorded that like in Wisconsin, and the guy that was the host was like from Wisconsin, and he was doing a bunch of like local references and like fucking crushing as the host.
Uh-huh.
And I went up there with my bullshit and was fucking bombing. It was terrible. And then I recorded all of them and, put it out.
And I would not have noticed that listening to
I mean,
to
we
it
did a
today.
pretty good job of trying to make it sound like I did good.
I love stories like this. Like when Greg Stone, when he did his album, like the whole second show, like he had like a woman goes like crazy and has to get kicked out in the middle of the show, but at least they got it on they got the first show.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen closely, there's some parts where like it just like the jokes just fucking land there and fucking just lay there and shit. And who knows? I mean, there's probably stuff on there that's if you went back to is fucking cancelable now. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I'll be walking around and I'm thinking about like, what crazy shit did I say? Do I need to go back and listen to those? Do I need to pull those off the internet?
I think you're good, Dave, because
good.
Because the silly genteel nature of you on stage, I think, comes through. Like the wink wink nudge nudge of the jokes, I think is there. And dude, I look forward to seeing what you do next and hearing some more jokes from you, man. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, Dave.
Well, thanks, man. It's nice to do anything, and hopefully I'll come back to New York City one day.
Absolutely, man. I'd love to see you again. So I hope that happens.
All right, man. Well, you take care of yourself.
All right, you too, Dave. Thanks again. All right, that is comedian Dave Waite. Thank you so much for your time, man. Definitely, if you haven't, check out Dave's comedy albums wherever you get your music or your stand-up comedy audio. Dave's a hilarious comic. I look forward to hopefully working with him in a vaccinated and brighter post-pandemic future. So thank you guys for listening. That is our show for today. If you enjoyed this podcast and think you know a friend who might be interested in this as well, I've interviewed a wide range of really cool and interesting people. So we are available wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Pandora, and everywhere else you get your podcasts. I also want to give a shout out to my supporter on Patreon at the awesome producer level, Mary Beth Minnie. Thank you so much for your support. I have big ideas for the Patreon in 2021. So if you guys are curious, you can go to patreon.com/awesomedisaster and check what I've got going on there as well. A lot of things that are available. My EP I recorded in quarantine last year, the songs are all available there. I make custom playlists. And I regularly talk about music on there as well. So thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you had a safe, healthy New Year and holiday season, and I hope that I hope 2021 brings you good things as well as it does me as well and those I care about. So thank you guys so much for being here, and I will see you next time between awesome and disaster. Stay safe and wear a mask.